Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. And then moving into a completely different realm, search marketing and legal. This week there was a story that's really been around for a couple of decades in one form or another. 1-800 contacts, trademark keywords, and Warby Parker.
Yeah, so I was just struck by it. I mean, obviously, if one that it's still a question that 1-800 Contacts thinks they have enough legal basis to stop Warby Parker from advertising on 1-800 Contacts name on the likes of Google. They contend that Warby Parker is leveraging 1-800 Contacts intellectual property and deceiving consumers with it. I looked at the ads; they look like ads to me. And historically, Google, this case law has generally fallen in Google's favor that allow businesses to advertise on competitors' names. It's kind of an annoying feature, but it's.
I was going to say, having been on the receiving end of this, it does suck.
It does suck, right? So on the one hand, I'm sort of support 1-800 Contacts effort here. I just question the logic of it. It doesn't. I know that 1-800 Contacts has historically been very aggressive with this. They went after a bunch of companies with their lawyers, and those companies all agreed to not do it. And then the FTC went after 1-800 Contacts, and for trying to constrain trade with these agreements,
which is precisely what they were doing in a certain way of looking at it.
Yes, absolutely. But those were agreements. This is not an agreement. They're going into open court to demand that Warby Parker stop advertising using their name to trigger the ads. And historically, there's never been a clear-cut case that has, even when the courts came down in favor of saying that wasn't quite right, they never awarded monetary damages, so it never was sort of worth it. 1-800 Contacts is particularly aggressive, obviously PE money. It's fascinating to me that this is the best expenditure of the money, but it could upend SEM totally. And
the thing that's problematic about it is the uncertainty that it creates, right? I mean, for the longest time, it was clear that you could bid on trademark terms as keywords. You couldn't use trademarks in the ad copy itself, but you could.
Unless you were going to do a direct comparison when you got to the site, then you could. So you could say Gather Up versus Grade Us comparison if you actually took them to a comparison page. That was legitimate.
Okay, but in general, you couldn't use trademark terms in the ad copy itself, but you could use them in the underlying keywords, and that was pretty much settled law for well over 15 years or something like that. And now this creates a certain level of ambiguity and uncertainty that 1-800 Contacts can potentially exploit to monopolize its own branded terms, which is what it's trying to do. I mean, the Warby Parker thing, they're saying you arrived at a landing page that looked like the 1-800 Contacts page, and there's an element of consumer deception. But as you point out, that doesn't. Maybe they changed it, but it doesn't really seem to be the case. But this is a problematic. This is a problematic decision by the Second Circuit Court of Appeal, which is based in New York, kind of telling 1-800 Contacts that these settlement agreements, which block the use of their keywords, were okay and not in restraint of competition or trade or whatever. So we're going to see. Well, I don't know how it affects the rest of the industry, but it's problematic.
Well, I was going to say, what are the implications for using trademark terms and title tags moving forward? I mean, if advertising is illegal, what's the next?
Potentially.
Where does this go? So it definitely seems like a problematic precedent if it ends up holding up. So
I mean, I think that typically cases get to the Supreme Court, sort of non-political cases get to the Supreme Court when there's a conflict in the law of the different circuits, right? The federal appellate courts have different decisions on the same topics. Then the Supreme Court will ultimately try and resolve those in favor of clarity for everybody. But somebody has to, that there has to be an active case. But it'll ultimately probably go there, but it's in the interim, it could be years of like confusion and weird lawsuits, and other litigants could step in and try and do similar things, And then when you have conflict in the laws in different jurisdictions, it's a big problem on the internet because there is no geography on the internet, essentially. So,
right.
You get the law of one jurisdiction, people trying to invoke the law of the Second Circuit when it's outside of, the physical region that appellate court typically governs. But it
seems like a big case to me.
I agree.
I'm just curious about it. And
definitely worth highlighting. Yeah.
I will follow it as we go forward, but I find it fascinating that they'd waste so much money on it. But obviously they have a lot of money to waste.
I think what they're trying to do is they're trying specifically to prevent competitors from saying we're offering a similar product for less money, and they want to lock out competitors from using their brand and other keywords that they think they own or control. And I wonder if it'll create this rush to trademark all these terms by all these companies.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I'm trademarking SEO, right? Somebody tried that years ago.
Was that
still remember? Rhea Drysdale successfully fought the suit.
Yeah. On
behalf of the industry.
Well, kudos to her. All right.
But all they're trademarking here, though, is their brand name, 1-800-CONTACT.
Well, but then people will get into other areas where they're sort of dubious. They'll
trademark a tagline, for example.
Yeah. Or just people have all kinds of crazy ideas about trademarks and what they think they're entitled to control.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.